Coogs House. The Houston Cougars have an incredibly important decision to make as they decide who's going to be the next head football coach in the third ward. Are we close to a decision? It feels really, really close.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you can listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It is so good to see you again. Hit subscribe to a giveaway every 250. We're about to 1750, so hit subscribe, help us get there. If you don't know what to comment on the video after hearing about the latest in the head football coaching search, tell us in the comments down below what you think of Gumbo. Could be important. Now, this is a bonus episode of Locked On Coogs on a Friday. Houston plays basketball tonight. There's a full-length episode on the preview of that game with Xavier. But I want to drop a little bit of a bonus bit here on all things Houston Cougar football tied to this coach, because we continue to get nuggets and leaks, and it feels like Houston might have made a decision. I think this means they're down to one of three guys, and I think one of those three guys is going to be a much more obvious pick than the others. But I think we should probably back up first by talking about what the leak was, or what the conversation was, and what the inkling has been. And then, quickly, what this means to the candidates that are playing football this weekend. And then wrap it up. We're going to talk basketball in the other episode. All right, so the leak was kind of twofold. One, to ESPN Central Texas. Gary Patterson was on the horn with the radio show. It's actually the Drake Toll Show. You guys know Drake. He also does Locked On Big 12. It was not talking to Drake, though, for what it's worth. He's just talking to the Drake Toll Show. He commented, Gary Patterson, that is, that he is not working right now. He resigned from his position at Texas to kind of like see what's next or whatever for him. And he had talked to the University of Houston. He has talked to the University of Houston about things involving coaching hire, but he has not had an interview, which is interesting. So I'm going to pair that with other pieces of information that we have. It also came out on Thursday that Tulane, through various Tulane blogs, is really, really, really ready to match whatever Power 5 offer Willie Fritz were to get offered, because it feels like he's getting close to one Power 5 offer. You also have, earlier this week, leaks that Jeff Traylor, the head coach at UT San Antonio, commenting that he was having an interview at the University of Houston. Now, putting these things together, one, Gary Patterson not having interviewed yet, if anyone has interviewed, probably means he's not the first choice. Have to make sure we keep that in mind, because I honestly had heard people say before he probably was the first choice. Now it sounds like he might not be. Traylor, having had interviews but not gotten the job, means they're waiting on something, right? Because if he were interviewing great and it was clearly him, they probably would have just handed it to him. Why keep waiting? The recruiting process started. You got to go get some more seniors in 2024. You got to go get some guys in the transfer portal on Monday. What else could you be waiting for? What you're waiting for are this weekend's games. I believe I said on Monday's episode, but it might have been Sunday's bonus episode last weekend when Dana got fired. The longer this process goes, the more likely it is that the coach is coaching in a conference championship game this weekend. Well, here we are on Friday morning, and it has not been announced yet. That means it's someone coaching this weekend, folks. It's got to be. There's no other reason not to. You got seniors to go get that are decommitting and flipping all over the place. You've got transfer portal opening up on Monday with a ton of talented kids, some from the Houston area, that have put their names or said they're going to put their names in it when it's time, right? If you had a guy in place before this weekend that was not coaching this weekend, you'd have announced it. You'd have hired him. You'd have signed on the dotted line because you need to get things going. Clearly, there is somebody coaching this weekend that Houston is waiting on because they've done the interviews with Traylor. They have not interviewed Patterson yet. They need to talk to someone that is still working. And on the side here, I've got a handful of candidates that are still working, namely Will Fritz. Now, Willie Fritz, head coach Tulane, built that program up, had a great 2-year run there. Looks like they're the favorites to win the American Athletic Conference for a second year in a row. Knocked off USC in the bowl game last year. Played Ole Miss tooth and nail during the season this year. Turned that program again. It took a little bit of a build. It took a couple of years, but got them to be relevant, nationally ranked. Right. He was talented at each of the smaller stops he had along the way. I think the big flaw in Fritz is he's from this region of the world, but is from Louisiana, right? He's more of a Louisiana guy. And so I could see how people would say on recruiting, there's a little bit of a difference, but I think he recruits the region pretty well. He was also at Sam for a while, right? So I think he'll be okay there as long as he can find Power 5 talent in the region because he's pretty knowledgeable of the region, to say the least, right? Turn kids from the region into pros. I also think it's worth pointing out that the other criticism is that he's 63. Right. And this idea is that, how long-term a hire could this be if you're taking a guy that's 63 years old? Because let's say he coaches 10 years. What does he look like at ages 71, 72, 73, right? What are you looking like you're going to have there, et cetera? I think with the current state of the program that you frankly can't worry about that. You just can't. If he's got to retire at 70, you got to do this whole rigmarole all over again. You do it. If he's got to retire at 67, you got to just hold rigmarole all over again in 4 years. You got to do it. You got to get the right guy in 2023 for the 2024 season. You can't worry about the 2028 season. You just can't. You got to make sure it's right now. He's coaching Tulane this weekend. He is the kind of class act that would certainly not leak any signed contract before, commit to an interview before, etc. Coaching in a championship game this weekend. By Sunday, could be different. Their game kicks off at 3 o'clock on Saturday. It's not that far to get to Houston. They're playing in New Orleans. Quick hop, skip, and a jump over to the Third Ward would not take long if he wanted to do it afterwards. I'm sure there'll be people tracking flight patterns and stuff like that. But that's, I think, the leader in the clubhouse. There are 2 other options. But first, if you're feeling frisky, feeling like gambling, feeling like you can name who the next head coach is, and you think you got a knack for getting things like this right, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now, because if you put a $5 bet as a new customer down on a moneyline bet and you win, you get $150 back in bonus bets just for being right. Right now, this weekend, they got the Houston Texans money line at -174. Pick that. Houston wins. You get your money and $150 back in bonus bets. They've also, for its worth, have Houston's 3.5-point favorite over under set at 47.5. I'm taking Houston across the board, and I'm telling you to do it at FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, now I think that everyone's feeling Fritz-y is my statement there, because it feels like Willie Fritz is the most obvious guy coaching this weekend that Houston would put other guys on hold to talk to, right? However, he's not the only guy. Earlier this week, when we talked about coordinators getting promoted to this job, Will Stein of Oregon was a hot name coordinator in a lot of different coaching searches. He's got ties as a recruiter to Texas from his time at UTSA and UT Austin and coaching high school ball in the Central Texas area. He is a natural choice to move up in the world to a head coach somewhere. He's done a great job in his time calling offense at UTSA and at Oregon. He turned Bo Nix into a Heisman candidate at Oregon. If they were to win the Pac-12 championship on Friday night, check your flight patterns. Is he flying to Houston on Saturday morning? Now, I think he's not as many people's favorites as Will Fritz. If Houston were to go the coordinator route, I don't think they'd be upset with him. For what it's worth, in a similar vein, a farther long shot, because I think he wants to stay in the Big Ten in the same kind of vein, is Sherrone Moore from Michigan. They are in the Big Ten championship game on Saturday night against Iowa. I think he's an outside shot. I think he wants to stay up north. He doesn't have the same kind of ties to Texas that Will Stein would have. And I think people want to keep recruiting in their region that they know better, especially for their first head coaching job, because that's where you're going to find the best athletes because you have the best connections. But if you're a Sherrone Moore guy, he'd be in the same boat. The one I think is worth pointing out that people have not been pointing out, because people didn't think of him as a candidate, frankly, is Barry Odom. Had his time at Missouri and is currently the head coach at UNLV. They've had a great season at UNLV. He is playing, or is coaching, I should say, against Boise State in their conference championship game this weekend in Las Vegas, Nevada. That's 2:00 on Saturday. So again, flight patterns check Saturday night. Across the board, though, that's a handful of several solid candidates that it sounds like at least one of is the leader in the clubhouse. Now, I think all logic points to Fritz. I think Fritz would be a great candidate. I think Fritz could do a great job at Houston. But I don't think he's the only one. And so I'm hesitant to just get all in on the Fritz train and get Feelin Fritz-y and get t-shirts printed and all that. Because while Feelin Fritz-y is a great t-shirt in Cougar Red, I want to make sure that we get this right. Now, I got faith in the program that they will get it right. I got faith in Pesman to get this thing right, because they've already done something I didn't think they'd do, and just getting us here. If you've got a favorite, if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm forgetting somebody, tell me in the comments down below of this bonus episode of Locked On Coogs. We appreciate you tuning in each and every day, sometimes multiple times a day. If you're looking for a second listen or a third listen of the day, go check out Locked On Big 12. Thank you all again so much. Locked On Coogs is a primary Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.